Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Simon. How's it going?
Good. I was supposed to ask you that. How's it going?
No, I'm asking you because I think you
Uh,
have something to talk about.
okay. All right, fine. I do. I was just going to say that my dad was in town for a few days after the new year, and we had a really fun adventure out to see the monarch butterflies, which,
Oh,
of course, because of the wind, are all blown away, which is
oh,
crazy. The wind that we had here on the coast, but Santa Cruz was beautiful. But also, then we watched the CES opening keynote, which was Jensen Wang from
NVIDIA,
NVIDIA. And guess what they talked about?
AI.
AI, and of course they are talking about it to sell more servers, sell more chips, sell more, basically tools and services, right, to support AI. But
Yep.
it was very interesting. He had a lot of good comments. Some of it went way over my head,
Mm-hmm.
technology wise. But obviously AI is a huge thing. It was my dad and I were both very interested in the conversation until it got to sort of chip level discussions about speeds and feeds and stuff like that. And we're like, both of us are like, okay, nope, done. So, but it was a good conversation, and I think it's timely because we want to talk about AI specifically in marketing today, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm curious about somebody like your dad and how he perceives it. Like, does he,
That's
what, how, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, my dad is almost he's we celebrated a birthday. He's 88 right now. But he's very savvy. He's sort of a tech savvy guy, and at the same time he's sort of old school. So I think for him, he sees AI as just how his phone works or how
Oh, that's
his
cool.
tablet works. It's more integrated in his concept. He just expects technology to continue to evolve, I think. And so um it doesn't surprise him when stuff does it. He's a little gets a little nervous about how much information they
Hmm.
know about him, or
Yeah.
whatever he's looking at. We were having a conversation while we were walking about, literally you say stuff and all of a sudden the ads that you start to see, and he's like, that is a little disconcerting. He's like,
Yeah.
can you tell me how to turn that off? And I'm like, we can take a look. So,
Yeah.
but I think specifically around AI, right? It, it's there in to help people with automation, personalization, decision making. Like Google's at it. Pretty much every search result page has an AI summary, which for the most part is probably accurate. Some things are a bit glommed together and they don't make sense, so it's good to dig into the article. But I think that's a great example of sort of, in a sense, a bot or a tool that's going to help people, right?
Hmm. Well, one thing I was thinking about is that I think in the last like year or two, it's like AI, AI, AI. But in marketing, the concept of machine learning or
Yep,
anything where there's algorithms, there's a computer that
exactly.
is kind of doing calculations, like that's been around for forever. I mean, that's
Yeah,
like
I
we've
mean,
heard of the algorithm, but it's like,
you
you
and
know,
I both worked for a company that relied heavily on understanding the customer, what they were watching, what they were doing, how they were interacting with the interface, and then making recommendations based on that. And
yep.
those recommendations, like you said, are machine learning, which I think now people are acknowledging is a form of AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, when you think about AI, the only way it works is if it's trained, right? So somebody
Yep.
has to start inputting content, inputting questions called prompts or queries, in order to have AI understand, conceptualize what you're talking about. Now, AI is definitely getting very, very smart.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, and we always have said in like the analytics realm, garbage in, garbage out. So
right,
if you are training AI on things that are not accurate, that's what's going to spit out also.
right.
But why don't we back up and just kind of let's think about it in the context of marketing
Hmm.
specifically, because it's kind of everywhere now.
Yeah.
So some of the things where like automation is also something that has been around for forever. So that's literally like, if this, then that. So,
Right.
automating emails, like when somebody buys something, I'm going to trigger an email to send to them. That's automation.
Right.
Personalization or a customization,
Been around. Yep.
yeah. And then helping with kind of decision making. And I think that's more in the analytics realm. Any other things that, for the context of marketing, how we might be leveraging AI?
Well,
Well, content creation.
yeah, I was going to say content creation. I think another area which is somewhat part of marketing, but it's really also part of sort of support, and that is, tools that help someone do troubleshooting or get started with a product. That's
Yep.
sort of that transition from conversion to engagement, and
Yep.
still something that as a marketer you have to control the brand, right? You want the whatever that tool is that's helping someone set up their device or use your product, you want it to be in your tone of voice. You want it to sound like your organization, things like that. So,
Yep. And actually, so chatbots is a good example for
yep.
support, but also one of the companies that I am supporting. So as you know, both of us have consulting, and so one of them that I'm consulting at is it's a pretty large company, and so they have a lot of employees that have help desk requests, and so that's typical for any organization. But
Right.
with the IT component, it has a chat bot, and you start with this is what my problem is, and then it'll say, did you try this, then this? And it's a bot. It's literally referencing articles or knowledge base, and it'll ask you,
Hmm.
did this work? And then ultimately you go through all this troubleshooting. And if it doesn't work, then it submits a ticket, which is also an automation. And then somebody else on the back end, you actually talk to a person if you need help.
Right.
So it's kind of sophisticated, and they have there are simple ones too. You can have just a
Yeah.
chat bot that's
I mean,
simple, but
like you said, I think it used to be if then that, but
yep,
now it can be there's endless outcome possibilities because of the amount of data and the speed at which AI works. You know,
well, it
even
takes computing power, which is what NVIDIA and others
right.
provide.
And, lots of internet bandwidth, and even companies like Apple are integrating it into the phone now, right? So
Yep,
it's essentially a lot of information is local. So
true.
I think ultimately the goal with the AI from a sort of company and maybe even a marketer's perspective, though, is to really help in an efficiency way, right? Automate
In
tasks
an
that
efficiency. Yeah.
and efficiency way. Sorry.
Yep. Well, it sounded like inefficient.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
In an efficient way,
Yeah.
improve efficiency, improve customer experiences, right? So take things like we just talked about, chatbots, and leverage those to actually help someone get answers and avoid sitting on a phone for 30 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever, and looking at data, obviously using AI to analyze data, and provide marketers again with more data driven results. That's what marketers want, right? We need to make decisions based on data. So the tools that help us get that data or see those insights are really valuable.
Yep. And actually, we should talk about some of the applications or tools that we can use. And one of the things that I remember talking to one of my clients about is they use, I think they use ChatGPT, or maybe Perplexity is another one. And
Hmm.
then Claude, which is by Anthropic, is another one. So a lot of people have heard of ChatGPT because they were kind of the first one a couple of years ago that
That
kind of came out,
right from
and people were
OpenAI.
like, oh
Yeah,
my gosh, like trying
yeah,
things out. And so from a content creation standpoint, where you start to ask it, like, I want to write a blog, or give me 10 ideas for a blog post, or like it can, help you with that. But the other thing that it can help you with are you can upload data. You could have a spreadsheet and you're going to go, give me some insights in this. And it can tell you, like, here are some observations that, oh, I've seen this, I see this trend. Or you could also, if it's a spreadsheet, you can say, turn this into a chart to help me visualize what this, data is. And so a lot of people don't know that it has these other types of
Um,
applications.
Right. And some of them too on the taking data and text to create images. I think we've all heard about
Yep.
some of that. But it can be really powerful, especially if you're creating a lot of the same images over and over.
Yep.
You can use a tool to do that for you instead of, even if you're the original source of the design, let's say, or the image, to resize or to adjust or manipulate the image in some way. So yeah, there's a lot of tools for that as well, and they're built
Well,
into.
built into what? Go ahead.
Well, I
Sorry.
was just going to say, you mentioned some of the chat and text based things, but there's
Yep.
also like Adobe has products that have AI built in, Canva. There's other options.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where I was starting to almost interrupt you,
Hmm.
which is like I was thinking about there's something called Mid Journey, or and there's something called Dolly, which is part of ChatGPT, where it's literally you use words, it's a text box, and you say, create me an image that is blah, 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 blah. And you explain what you want, and then
Hmm.
it'll generate an image. This is generative AI, is usually what we call that, is literally
Yep.
this image part. And then to your point, Canva, Adobe Express, and then some other, there's Adobe has professional, creative professional tools that have all of this. They've always had AI, I feel like. But you can create something like, let's say you start with a
Stock photo.
square, or you could
Yeah.
start with a stock photo, exactly, and then you want to add something else on top of that, or you want to add text on top of it, so it becomes a little bit more, you have a little more control with something like that. Whereas
Right.
with the Dolly or Mid Journey, it keeps regenerating a whole thing all over again. And you might
Right.
say, no, change this, and then it looks totally different. It's
Yeah.
not an incremental change, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
I see.
It's
Yeah.
it's like drastically different.
Right. It's a bit more like spin art. Like you could use the same colors and you get different designs.
Spin art, literally like a thing going on around on like a record player,
Did you
and then you
not?
dribble. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I know. I'm like,
But
that is like, we're old.
oh no.
Did
Kid
your kids do that?
Yeah, kids still do
Okay.
it. But
Okay.
I mean, I,
Blue,
outside
Blue, Blue
outside
Man
of the
Group did it.
yeah, outside of the fact that you can use this, what to your point, you can use the same colors, you prompt with the same words, but the design you get may be totally different.
Yeah.
If you start with something like a stock photo and you say, "Here's a living room, throw in a grand piano," right? It's going to be a little more, like you said, controlled, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I
Yep.
I want to take a pause though too, because we're talking about generative AI creating content. I think I want to put in like a little like PSA here, which is don't panic about
Right.
AI. I think initially a lot of people are panicking. Oh, my job is going to go away. I'm a creative professional and now a computer is going to do my work. But if you think about the history of anything, right, manufacturing, making cars, working in a food factory, whatever, there are automations that have actually improved either the workers environment and work experience, the culture. Menial tasks are taken care of by tools instead of people. Dangerous tasks taken care of by tools, things like that. Yeah, so
Definitely. You hit the nail on the head, or I was indicating my nose, because yeah, right on the nose, is because these are things that they're boring tasks. And especially if you're a creative professional, I would say this gives you an opportunity to be more creative. Like, focus
absolutely.
on the good stuff, and then doing the production part. And if you are, let's say you do, let's say production is your job, I have a feeling that it's gonna make you're gonna be more efficient.
And more
Like, everything
innovative.
is,
More innovative because
yeah,
your own designs, you're not going to have to, like you said, spend the time just resizing or reworking. You're going to have help. I think the concept of AI that I really like, and NVIDIA talked about this in the keynote, which is they become your employee assistant. So
Yep.
wouldn't everybody like,
Agents is the word I think
yeah,
they've been using. Yeah.
wouldn't everyone like a personal assistant or a
Yeah.
personal agent, like to do anything to help you? And think about the tools like Siri, right? Even without the integration of the Apple intelligence, you could always say, Siri, set a reminder. Siri, look this up. How old is, Lisa Flosnick?
Do you have your phone and you're right there? Is she listening to you?
I have it here, but I make sure that it doesn't answer locked screen because I talk about it too much.
Yeah, that's very funny.
So again, the idea being that these improvements create some jobs are lost, yes, but other jobs are created, right?
Absolutely.
And as humans, we can innovate and we can adapt and we can change. So that was a long PSA, but
It's a good one to point out, though. I
yeah.
think that was worth our little sidebar marketing.
So let's talk a little bit about how do you get started with AI? Like, where should say a marketer or creative, whatever, how do they even like jump in?
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind, to be honest, it depends on your personality. If you are one to be like, I'm just going to try, like, get a free ChatGPT account and
Hmm.
start playing with it. Like, that's
Right.
certainly one way, is just to like dive in and then start, or like I think Mid Journey requires you to actually pay because it costs so much to generate images.
Hmm.
But there are other ones that it's free. So again, I would start with anything that's free that you
And
can play around.
and to your point here, try a bunch of free. If you're looking for text solutions, things that will help you write better,
Hmm.
create more concise paragraphs, summarize content. Start with a few free ones and try them out until your trial
Yep.
runs out or whatever. Because everyone's going to be different. I agree with that.
And I mean, I think from a marketing perspective, there is kind of a thought process where you can kind of go, well, what is it that I really need? And it doesn't have to be this formal audit, but like Christina that we've had on the podcast before, I know she was using things to help her just to write emails. She's like this, just to regular communication, not to her cut to like mass emails to customers, but in general, just like, this is what I want to say. And then it just makes it concise and,
Well, and
gets to the point. And
and from productivity, she also uses a tool that after we do a Zoom call, it summarizes with notes and tells us like what did we
that's
talk
true.
about and what were the action
Exactly.
items, and that allows you and Christina or me or whoever to focus on the conversation and being engaged and not worrying about trying to write notes down. So
Exactly. So
yeah,
that's not even marketing per se.
sure,
It's just like, regular
business,
productivity.
yeah,
Exactly. But then there's like the very common thing, again, content in general. That's where I think AI can add value. And we've already talked about ChatGPT, Perplexity. What was the other one? Claude
Claude,
Anthropic is the name of the
Anthropic,
company. Yeah, yeah. And you had said, Simon, that like try different ones. And in fact,
yeah.
I ended up paying for ChatGPT, and then I also ended up doing it's a team account that costs a tiny bit more. And with the team account, and this is actually something important to note, the team account will not share the things that you are writing with the rest of the world. So just as much as like
Mm.
the if you have a free version, um, or even the ChatGPT's regular paid is $20 a month, and if you don't have the team version, anything that you're typing and looking, it's taking that information and it's training the AI further.
So that's
So
another, quick
caveat,
note is you mentioned spreadsheets earlier of data. You
yes,
actually want to be really careful. Lots of companies are now adopting AI policies, which,
yep,
you need to either sanitize the content you put up or maybe you just can't even use a certain AI tool because the company uh, information doesn't you don't want it out there, right? That's
yeah,
proprietary, it's confidential, typically a lot of things
yep,
like data from analytics and things. So it really depends. Again, if you have an account that keeps it more secure or locked down, like this
yep.
team idea from ChatGPT, then that's really helpful.
Yep, exactly. Um, Let's
I
see. Where
well,
were we?
so
How do you
so
start?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think you were maybe going to go to start small, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
pick one thing you want to improve, right? Like it might be writing emails, it may be copy, maybe you constantly do a repetitive analysis of something, or you provide people feedback. Let's say I'm thinking marketer, we should go back to things like timeout, sidebar marketing.
Yeah, because you said repetitive tasks. So there's something else that ChatGPT and probably others. I sound like I'm an ad for it, but they are called GPTs, where you can create your own. So let's say, like you and I have created one for. We have like an outline of what we want to talk about in each episode. And so there's a GPT that we basically say, this is the topic that we want to talk about. This is the guest that we have on, if we have a guest or not. Come up with a discussion guide. And then it's the same format every time. So it's literally like it's a repeatable, or you could do that for like, you always write a blog post, and the style of your blog post, you can train it. You can literally upload other documents that it would reference, almost like a knowledge base, and say, always reference this, check this, and that's another one that I just started playing with it. And then you use words, like you don't have to have a, computer engineering kind of a degree. You're just literally saying, I want a GPT that does this, 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 this. And then it writes the prompt more formally, and then it spits something out, and then you might iterate on it.
So I
And
do some
sidebar
work.
marketing.
Yeah, well, related sidebar market. I was gonna pop quiz. What does GPT stand for?
I don't know.
It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's a model that can generate human-like text out of large language model. We get
I
technical.
see you reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't know.
I didn't know either.
No, that's good.
But it's almost like it doesn't matter, because generative pre-trained transformer, the first thing I think about is the yellow bumblebee car from the movie Transformer.
Mm-hmm.
So but to your description, I think it's you create a template that's based on what we call a prompt, or a set of questions, or guardrails that you're defining inside of ChatGPT.
As a matter of fact, I've seen some prompts that other people have written that say, do this, do this, do this, but then it'll say, don't make things up, because that's literally something it will do. It will literally make things up. And for some reason, they call that hallucinating. And I don't know why it's called that. But so sometimes you have to be that specific.
Yeah.
Like you say, like, only do this or only reference this. And like, you got to be real clear about it.
Yeah, I was going to say I do some volunteer work, and one of the things I do is mock interviews, and I have a prompt, a GPT written, that it creates questions for the interview, and I just basically cut and paste the job description that this person's
a great use case
applying for, and I get questions to ask them generated from AI. And sometimes I'm like, I look at the question, I'm like, I'm not going to ask that. It doesn't make sense. But sometimes it's pretty amazing. And I, like you said, I've said, include questions about, gaps in their work history, and questions about background, like where they came from, things like that. Mm-hmm. So you can get very specific, and then repetitive, like it's consistent. Like consistency is great.
Anything that is repetitive, or like a thing that you're doing over and over again, like to me, use AI.
Yeah, and you touched on this, but learn to write good prompts. And if you need to, there's so many resources out there on the internet about writing prompts for different things. I've seen writing prompts for resume review, writing prompts for, I mean, pretty much somebody has probably thought about a prompt that you're interested in. And there's YouTube videos, there's forums, all of that. You're going to be able to find content about prompts. And you know what? If you create a prompt is really amazing and there's nothing else like it, share it, unless you think it's proprietary. But I mean, this is this is how we all learn. So
Yeah, and I think that yeah, that's just it. Experiment. The more you do it, the more you'll start to understand how it will respond to you.
yeah,
And yeah, just
and
kind of playing around.
and be willing to adapt, because I have used Chat GPT for 2 years now. I think I was on the early beta side of things. Um,
Show off.
it's yeah, it's well, it was like somebody talked about it, and I'm like, well, I'm going to do that. Like I just was like curious, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that happens is it's changed over time, right?
So quickly.
And it doesn't necessarily respond the same way, because now it's been sort of optimized, and so you have to make changes, you have to adapt and learn. So just
Mm-hmm.
be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be, yeah, I mean, I'm going to date myself again, but the beginning of search on the internet, right? And we're all like, wow, this is crazy. Yahoo was in the lead, and then this little
Mm-hmm.
company came called Google, and everyone's like, well, what's this? Why not use the Yahoo directory? I think it was called, or something crazy like that, right? Yahoo
Mm-hmm.
directories. And so, search gets smarter and smarter and adapts and changes. And I think that's the world we're in now with AI.
Yep.
We have to learn how to ask good search questions or search terms, and you have to learn how to write a good AI prompt for sure.
I do want to mention that there are a couple of other tools. I think the
Mm-hmm.
broad categories are I don't even know what, because I don't, so it's OpenAI is the company that has ChatGPT, and I don't know what they call that category because it's not just content. Again, within it, there's images, there's analysis,
I
there's
think
other
it,
things. So I don't know what that category is
Yeah,
called.
I would say it's sort of more text based, like you just described it earlier, versus. Well,
Yeah,
go
there's other
ahead.
ones that are more images. Well then I was just, so those are broad in my mind, and
Hmm.
then we can start to get into, there are other tools that have very specific use cases. So there's a company called I think Jasper is one, like Jasper.ai, I want to say. And then with that one, and I haven't looked at the site in a while, but with that one, you have use cases or scenarios like I want to write a social post, or I want to write a blog post, or I want to do, so
Hmm.
it's already been trained for whatever the medium is.
Right. The
And then you
output.
put in, yeah, and then you put in what you want. So there's tons of like other very specific things. I think in the landing page discussion we had, there's this product called yep.so, yep.so, that you type in, this is what my product is, da, 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 and then it just creates a landing page for you. Like it literally just generates it in front of
Yeah.
you. And it makes a bunch of stuff up. I will say, like it literally puts in like fake customer quotes and stuff. Like, it makes up a lot of things, but it's still like in seconds you can create this, and even some website platforms have started to do that too. So
Hmm.
Squarespace has a beta where you just type in, this is what my company is, this is what, these are the sort of sections I'm interested in, and so it'll lay it out and then create pages for those sections, and then you have to just sort of fill in some of the content. But yeah, so there's a
And,
lot of these like niche things too.
but again, these are no different. They're just more sophisticated than, say,
Mm-hmm.
a word template for, making a menu, a word template for a pamphlet, a word template for a half page, flyer, a word,
Yep.
word templates for labels. But now we're talking about stuff that's, seemed, for a lot of people, website might seem terrifying, right? To create a
Yeah.
website. But if something gives you a rough outline, even if you have to go in and
Totally.
tune it up, think about that. It's like, wow, I sort of took a step, and I'm now way forward.
Yeah.
And again, you're right. There's still going to be work, and that's why, again, I don't think people need to worry. Sometimes you're going to still need a creative person to come in. You're going to need a UX
Well,
person to look at this
exactly what I
and
was going to
validate
say.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
and you have to have a strategy.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there's things like that. Like you and I are in a position where we advise people, and creating websites is something that we do. And the fact that anybody can do this is also like, 20, 30 years ago when all of a sudden desktop publishing became popular. Again, dating myself, but where, anybody was like, oh,
Well,
I can create a flyer now that I have a Mac, and it's
oh
like,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
still a bad designer. Like, you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
there's still,
Okay.
just because you can do it,
Right.
so there's,
I
I
was
do think
thinking
that
about
there's what?
I have this picture of MySpace pages, right? And
Yeah.
some of them were awful. Like
Yeah, totally.
it's like, do you
It's,
not understand anything about color theory
I,
or flow
all of those things.
and
And
it's
you know
like
what? I got to be honest. So, sidebar is that some people, I've seen some websites and people are so proud that they created this thing and it's terrible. And it's like, just
terrible.
because you did it doesn't mean it's good. So,
Well,
just
because
as an
then
aside.
it gets back to, and like you said, strategy, but then you have to optimize, you have to look at your data. All of these things that we talk about on our show work together. At the end of the day, none of these things stand alone, right?
Yep.
AI, great example is Lisa and I often use it to like create a show note, right? So from our podcast, we'll create a short summary to describe
Oh, that
the
too.
show, and that's
Yep.
generated for us, and then we go tweak it if it doesn't sound quite like us. But
Yep.
that really helps. It helps us get the show out sooner and things like that. So
That is true.
these things all work together. I guess is
Yep.
the marketing is a web, but it's more than that, right? So
It's true.
what are those things then that I mean that people should sort of just, we talked about a couple things you need to be aware of, like sharing your own data and things like that. What are some other pitfalls?
Um, you can't just set it and forget it. You
Mm,
have to be involved, I would say, or just not just set it and forget it, but like how you just gave the example of after we do a recording, the tool that we use for the recording will generate show notes for us based on everything that we've talked about. So that's all AI. We could just ignore it and just upload it and post it, but we don't. We review it and then we were like, oh, that doesn't sound right, and so you make changes. And so
right.
you could ignore it. Like you can say, create me a blog post, and it creates it, and then you just post it, and then you find out it's
Yeah,
wrong
you
and it's
don't want to.
offensive.
I guess you don't
You don't
want
want
to
to be overly
reliant.
rely on it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah, you have to be involved.
you have to have human touch, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think you always have to do that quality check, right? So there's probably going to be a whole bunch of new jobs in just quality review, right? Looking at things that are generated and then
Well, yes, but I would also say there is. This is a little bit of a plug. So I subscribe to something called Marketing Profs. It's a newsletter, but it not just a newsletter. It's marketing content. So webinars and guides and a bunch of stuff. And there's a guy who he's a marketer at an agency who has really like gotten very sophisticated with content generation and using AI.
mhm,
And he has a process where he could probably just automate everything, where he has it coming up with the ideas for blog posts based on looking at what are people talking about, what are people interested in. From there, it might generate outlines. From there, he's trained it to write like him. He's trained it to write in the length that he normally writes in and
mhm.
that kind of thing. And it's like, and his content is great. Anytime that he is a speaker, I'm always one to want to
Listen.
listen to what he
Mhm.
has to say because it's very good. So
So
anyway,
so I think what you're saying is it is possible or conceivable to have a tool do everything from start to finish,
but it
it
takes
took
time
him
to
a
get
lot of
there.
training,
It
right?
did.
He
Absolutely.
again it goes back to you might be able to quickly say summarize this paragraph, right? But it's another thing to have a workflow that's fully optimized in your own tone and voice, that reflects you and what you care about. The priorities. The AI doesn't understand priorities necessarily, or your priorities, right?
Exactly.
So you need to look at that. I think the other thing we talked about, and no no need to beat the digital horse here, but again, think about tasks that are menial or repetitive, and make those some of the things that you start with, right?
Yeah, I want to actually give a shout out to the guy because I
Oh,
was like,
sure.
I was not remembering his last name exactly. So I wanted to make sure I got it right. So Andy Crestodina is his name and
Okay.
Orbit Media is the name of his agency.
And what's the name of
Um,
his? Does he have a podcast?
I don't know if he has a podcast, but you can follow him on LinkedIn.
And
So
he's
he has
on
good
marketing
marketing
prof
profs.
dot
Yeah. Com.
com.
.com. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. So we were kind of talking about like what are some, I don't know, pitfalls for lack of a better word.
Mhm.
Well, I
Uh,
think we talked about
I think
that.
we talked about
Yeah.
all of them pretty much.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
again, you have to
Maybe
have
just summarize.
yeah, you want to balance AI with creativity. You want to make sure that you're using AI ethically, right? In the sense that, and this is for all you college students and high school students out there, do not let AI write your
Write your
paper.
papers.
Write your paper, and then you can say, you can ask AI to maybe tune it or check for grammar or make some recommendations. Or I often suggest to folks, don't put the whole paper in because, of course, you're helping someone else that's learning. But
Yeah.
put in the maybe paragraphs or sections that you think this doesn't sound right, or I can't figure out how to make this transition from one thought to another. Ask AI to help with that particular piece. But again, think about, don't make this stuff say, oh, hey, I wrote this whole paper when you didn't, right?
Yeah.
Kind
Well,
of thing.
okay. I got a little tangent to touch on there. So I have a friend who she's an English professor at Northeastern University. Also, Rob's mom is an English teacher at a community college, and so both of them
Mm-hmm.
are struggling with people writing papers and whatnot. Now, what AI doesn't do is teach you the critical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
teach you how to organize your thoughts. Like those are the things, and maybe what the subject matter is that you're writing about.
Right.
So the grammar part, like we have spell check, as you know, it's like there's things like that that we have other tools to help us, and learning proper grammar. Like it's good to learn these things
Sure.
first, but you still need to have the communication skills is another thing. So when you go out into the world and you're emailing colleagues or whatever, like you need to have good communication skills. So you
Right.
have to learn that. So don't kind of be like, oh, it's an easy, I want to go out, partying and blow, I don't want to write my paper. It's like you're doing yourself a disservice if you
I
just blow
mean,
it off.
again, I don't know. Do those teachers make recommendations? I would say, like I said, write your paper first, and then
Yeah.
use AI to help you
Well,
a little bit.
Well, what's fascinating to me, because my friend is closer to my age, and then Rob's mom obviously is older than I am. And
Mm-hmm.
so those different generations, like Rob's mom is having to just like wrap her head around the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
where my friend is having conversations with her students about what we value. Like it's a whole other conversation that she's
Mm.
having with them, which I think is very interesting. And she's having them like, what makes a good prompt? Like she talks about that. And in fact, she uses the same prompt, and I don't remember what it is. It's like the way that the prompt is written, it's ambiguous. So it's sort of like a baseball and a bat. And it's kind of like, I forget what it is, but it's almost like, is the baseball like a sentient, like it's like personal, like what's the word when you turn amorph, what's the word when you turn something into something that's inanimate and you turn it into like a live thing, like Mr. Met is a baseball
Okay.
head. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
like the way that it's written, it could have been interpreted that the baseball is a human, like
Right.
personified with a bat, or it's a person with a baseball and a bat. And so the way that she writes the prompt, it's deliberately ambiguous. And then she sees how different tools will respond to it.
Mm.
And then they talk about it. And so it's like, I feel like she's leaning in,
Right.
like she's got the,
Absolutely.
like, but there's still I don't know that she's like,
So I
don't
think
use it.
I think
Yeah.
we should have her on and just do a short
That's a good
for
idea.
her, because I
Yeah.
think it's really interesting. Like you
I
said,
love it.
to lean into AI and teach your students. Again, you're teaching them to think, right? You're teaching them to,
Yep.
before they even use a tool like this, like structure questions, how you ask questions.
Yeah. I love it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
I'll ask her.
I'll just put a plug in for my dad too. We were at looking at the butterflies, and one of the docents was there, and my dad is brilliant at asking really concise short questions. Like he gives
You
a
and I
quick
don't have
summary.
that.
No, we don't. And I would love to learn it more from him. But, he summarizes the issue. He says, okay, so if the butterflies, eucalyptus, he starts with, see, I'm not even doing a good job. Eucalyptus trees are not native to California. They come from Australia. They were brought for the railways, things like that. He said, so if the butterflies come to the eucalyptus groves to cluster for the winter, what if there are no eucalyptus trees? Where do they only cluster in eucalyptus trees? And that was sort of his question. And it's like, if there were, where did they
Yeah.
cluster before eucalyptuses
Yeah.
were in California?
Yeah.
And Dosen was like, that is a very good question, and basically then she went into a whole conversation. Just in a nutshell, as long as the leaf or the like the needle is narrower than the butterfly body with the wings out, the butterfly can attach to that. So that's why eucalyptus have long leaves. Pine trees work. There are other trees with very narrow leaves, and that's what the butterflies, they won't go to maples, right? Or oaks. They're too big. The leaf is too big, kind of thing. And they cluster and lock onto the leaves. And then we went into a whole nother discussion about legs and hooks and Velcro, and it was just fascinating. But anyway, look up monarch butterflies. Come visit Natural Bridges in Santa Cruz.
Oh my God. All right. Well, that's probably a good place to wrap up.
Yeah. So I think, what we're going to see from AI in the future is, even more personalization, right? Their tools are getting faster and better. And it's going to be like your assistant. It really is going to be your agent, your helper, your partner. Take advantage of that. I think it's going to be more optimized visually and for voice and things. It's going to be less based on text. I think a lot of it's going to happen where it's just in a sense it's intuitive or in the background, so you're not even going to have to write a prompt. It's going to be listening, if you will, or monitoring, and all of a sudden it's going to make you a suggestion. So just be ready for that, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Your phone's going to pop up and say, I know you were talking about dinner reservations. You should make a reservation at one of these 3 places that has tables available at 7 p.m. for 4 people. And you're going to be like, wow, this is awesome. And then you're going to say creep factor. So you have to there'll be some balance there.
Yep. All right.
Good conversation.
From tangents to tactics.
It's mostly marketing. And if you like our show, subscribe. And if you have questions, feel free to visit itsmostlymarketing.com and post a question, ask the host.